This is Josh Bycer from GameWisdom.com. Hope you enjoy this Critical Thought, your daily discussion on game design. And be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and you can pitch future Critical Thought topics. Alright everybody, I got a good Critical Thought for you today. We're going to be talking about stealth game design, or the important elements that make up a good stealth system. This is going to be based on probably one of my longer posts over on Game Wisdom in a while, which you'll find the link below. And to kind of expand on things, I'll be talking about different examples and themes from that post, just so you're not just listening to what I just wrote there. But when it comes to stealth design, this has been a very evolving part of game development and game mechanics. From the old days of feeling asleep in Metal Gear, to today with titles like Mark of the Ninja, and even games that feature part action and part stealth. Everything from something like Alpha Complex, Shadows of Mordor, Batman the Arkham series, and so on. But when it comes to making a good or bad stealth system, there are four key elements of that. And the first one we'll talk about is how the player is detected, or how they're going to screw up and all their alarms go off. Most video games will obviously use vision. Player walks in front of a guard sounds the alarm, we're in trouble. But there are other options available. There is sound, there is heat, there's even scent. Some puzzle games, I think the Marvelous Mistake, if I remember right, also had like guard dogs who would sense the player by the scent trails they would leave off. But typically you're going to have at least one, maybe two different forms of detection. Now, while vision and hearing are pretty big ones, it's also important to understand the details of them. When it comes to vision, how far does the player have to be before they're spotted? Some games I could be 30 feet away, the enemy won't see me. Other games I have to be like 5 feet or closer. And then there's even with sound. Can the enemy hear me through a wall? If there's two walls between us and I jump up and down, will those sound waves reverberate out across two walls for the enemy to hear me? In the recent game I played, Too Dark, that was pretty much the case and made things extra annoying. But when it comes to detection, one of the most important parts about detection and stealth design is that the player needs to understand what their position is in the world. Are they safe? Are they in threat of being spotted? If I shoot this enemy, will the sound be picked up by someone else? You need to give the player this information so that they understand what they did right and what they did wrong. If I shoot an enemy and every 2 out of 4 times he alerts all the enemies around him, and then the other 2 times he doesn't, how am I supposed to know what I did right and how to improve? And a really good example of having that kind of information displayed to the player would be from the game The Mark of the Ninja. This was another great game from Clay Entertainment, and what they did was build all the detection information directly into the game space. If I'm running, you'll see like sound reverberations pop out. If I kill an enemy, you'll see like the death scream echo out till you know the exact distance it would go. If I'm in the concealment through the dark, the ninja has like duller colors and he's like crouching on the ground. While I'm in daylight, the screen gets brighter and the music picks up as well. These are all organic ways of providing information so that the player always knows what's going on. Very rarely in that game will you get detected and you would have no idea what happened. And that's a very big part when it comes to this kind of stealth design. Now, some games have gone with like other unique ideas as well. Like we said with a game like The Marvelous Mistake, and I think Metal Gear may have also had scent at some point, by adding in more options. But we'll talk more about that in the next minute. One other point about detection is that, like I said, if it's organic, it's usually better. And there's a very strange example of this, and it's from Payday 2. If you didn't play Payday 2, what they did was the stealth system works by every weapon in the game or every piece of gear has a concealment stat. And the higher the number is, the worse the harder it is for you to stealth with it. So A rocket launcher would have less concealment than a silenced pistol or a silenced derringer. And then all the gear you wear factors into a stealth rating or an evasion rating or something like that. And the lower that number is, the better. And what happens is, if you have, I think the lowest you could go was 3 concealment. And the lower that number is, the closer you have to be for an enemy to see you, and the slower their alert status triggers. So if I have like full bad stealth, if I have like the lowest possible concealment rating, like that, which it's kind of weird, low means high, high means low kind of thing, then the enemies can spot me from a mile away. If I'm down to 3, I can get almost within, 2 to 3 feet, and they still may not see me if their back is turned. And this is a case of providing the player with some information, but it's not really properly displayed all that well to them. Again, how do I know what the difference is between a 3 concealment and a 6 concealment? Why is this enemy spotting me when this other one hasn't yet? And they probably could have done a better job of that, in my opinion. Now, the next part of a stealth system are the player's options. And this is everything and anything that has to do with avoiding detection. And when it comes to stealth games, you can also throw in the abilities to either distract, hurt, stun, incapacitate enemies as well. But depending upon the game and the design question, those options may not be needed, or they may just break the game. But basically, you need options. If the player has no means of avoiding detection, then you don't really have a stealth game. And simply, walking behind a corner does not count as a stealth action. Some games allow you to go prone, go underneath desks, pick up objects and throw them as a distraction, stuff like that. But usually, the more the better. Now, this is not the same as how strong the player is, which we'll talk about in a minute. But you want to give the player options, because the more you have, the richer the experience is going to be. One of the great things about the Metal Gear Solid series is how they really give the player a wide berth in terms of avoiding detection. You have everything from knocking on walls to distract enemies, incapacitating them by a chokehold, the famous cardboard box, and even in later Metal Gears, you have stealth camouflage, active camouflage. Trying to remember some of the more interesting examples. Hiding in the grass, and I'm sure there are probably even more that I'm forgetting right now. But the point is, the more options you can give the player, it allows them to have more freedom in getting through your stealth sections. One of the worst things about stealth design, or when it's in bad games, is when there's only one and only one way to get through a level. And that leads back to that trial and error gameplay, where it's, I wait for the guard to take 5 steps, move forward 3 steps, wait a minute, go to the left, go up the stairs, climb down, get to the item. Oh no, I miscalculated this guy, he sees me, the mission's over, we have to start the whole thing over again. And you can see something like that with a game like Too Dark, where the enemies just hunt you down mercilessly once they get on you, and you really can't fight your way out of a situation. Now, when it comes to dealing with enemies, this leads back into balance and the character's power. You have to be really careful with how you factor into being able to permanently deal with enemies, or just incapacitate them for a few minutes. Because if you can completely get rid of an enemy, that is a very powerful ability in a stealth game. And in some games, it's very likely that you can just wipe all the enemies out, and then you're free to do whatever the heck you want. In Payday 2, what they did to counter that was, in some of the levels, if you take out most of the guards, another guard may spawn in. But, again, it's easier to sneak around 2 guys than it is to sneak around 5 guys. Now, another part of good stealth design is the enemy design itself. And this is specifically how the enemy is going to spot the player or move around. And there are a lot of different aspects we can talk about here. You have games where the enemy, if they see you, you'll see like a little, alert bar raising up before they sound the alarm. You have some games where the second the enemy spots you, everyone in the level knows where you are. And then there's even something about getting away from them. How active or responsive are enemies in terms of hunting you down? In Too Dark, for instance, there were cases where enemies were basically finding me even though they had no way of actually seeing where I was going. And then you have some games like Metal Gear where enemies will hunt you, but they'll hunt the general vicinity, and then they'll give up and go back to their patrol routes. And that's another point. Will enemies have established patrol routes? Is it random? Again, going back to Payday 2, the enemies have preset routes they go through, but the routes they decide to go at any active time is random. So you may have a guard go forward and then to the right, and then on their next path they may go forward and then straight across. It's still established paths, but the order that they'll go through it is completely random. Now that actually leads into a bigger discussion about how viable should stealth be, and we're about 10 minutes in and we still have 2 more to talk about, so we can't talk about that too much here. But there are some games where stealth is simply the preamble before combat. Other games, stealth is master level play. And then there are some cases where stealth is simply just you running out the clock until the action starts. It's, getting into the right position and then go nuts. Such as in XCOM 2, with how when you shoot an enemy while you're in concealment, it breaks stealth for everyone except for the specific character, and then we get into the real fight. But when it comes to enemy options, you can really go crazy with how you design your enemies. You could have ghosts that go through walls, spider enemies that climb on the ceilings and look down at you, mobile cameras, drones, cyborgs who sense sound on the ground, enemies who will hear you if you're walking around water. Again, depending upon how far you want to go, you can do almost anything. Typically, when it comes to enemy design, enemies are usually built around 1 or 2 methods of detection, and then you'll have maybe a special one for unique enemies. Let's say we have one type of enemy who has an aerial scanner, which prevents them from being killed by drop-down takedown attacks, like we see in Batman or Shadows of Mordor. Maybe you have another enemy who's bulky and is immune to one-hit stealth kills from behind. You normally don't have a super enemy. The enemy who can see everywhere, is immune to all damage, and can chase a player to the ends of the world. With that said, there is a major exception to that with Alien Isolation, who have what I like to call an alpha antagonist. For those of you who played Alien Isolation, especially stealth game fans, what did you think about that? Because I'm kind of 2 minds. I thought it was a really good idea, but it still felt a little artificial to me, especially playing on the hard mode when the AI really gets tweaked up to find you. But let me know what you think about that in the comments. But like I said, this is another one of those cases where the more you have, the better. Now the 4th part, and this is where things get very fascinating when we talk about design, is the character's strength. And as I said a few minutes ago, this is not the same as the character's options. You can have a weak character who has, almost like a tool chest or a hope chest full of tools and tactics they can use to get around enemies. You can have a super strong character or that all he can do is hide and neck snap people. But the point is, one of the most important factors of an effective stealth system is how strong the character is going to be, because this is going to infer on all aspects of the system. For instance, in a game like Batman the Arkham series, Batman is pretty much a badass. This is not a guy who gets scared by guards. So a lot of his moves are about power. As we said earlier, this is about taking out rooms full of guys one at a time. And then, of course, jumping down to a group of unarmed guys and then beating them with martial arts. But the point is that the moveset of Batman capitalized on the fact that he is the apex predator. He's not supposed to be hiding because he's scared. He's basically getting to the position to take these guys down. The counterexample would be something like Haunting Ground or Clock Tower series, where you're playing someone who is scared. They have no effective means of defending themselves. They're not martial artists, crime fighter, military people, and all they can really do is hide. But with that said, you still have to give the player some means of surviving. Again, a stealth game is not just you walking around and, putting yourself behind a wall and that's stealth. It was one of the things that drove me nuts about Amnesia, with how you really didn't have all that effective means of getting around the enemies, and once they spotted you, it was quicker just to let them kill you, rather than, leave them on a cat and mouse chase. But, like I said, when it comes to designing your stealth system, this is the foundation of it. Another good example of a game that made you a badass without making you a aggressive one would be the Thief series. Thief, of course, being the now very famous series of you're playing, as the title suggests, a thief who he can fight okay in one-on-one, but any more than that and he's pretty much screwed. And the real strength of him is with his arsenal of trick arrows and his ability to get around and outmaneuver enemies. This would be a case where you are playing someone who is very capable, but you're not playing, Solid Snake running around with an assault rifle shooting people. Which, even in the Metal Gear Solid series, that is typically avoided because Snake is still just one guy. And being able to understand the limits of your character is another important part. Going back to Batman, again, one-on-one fight, Batman's going to win. There's no way around that. But they balance it by making it so that a group of guys with guns all shooting at Batman, he's still not bulletproof. He's still a man, and he'll get killed that way. And that's the way of making the player powerful without making them omnipotent. Because if your character is just literally death incarnate, then what's the point of a stealth system? And many action games that have combined stealth elements in it have struggled or have had some issues with that balance. Shadows of Mordor would be a really good point. At the beginning of the game, you do have to remain hidden. You really can't fight multiple guys. By the end of the game, you were doing chain multi-kills and hiding and possessing guards to go do your bidding. And again, you're just walking around the battlefield killing anything and everything. There's even a power that you get that gives you, I think, one-hit melee kills for like 20 seconds. And you can just walk around killing like guys left and right like it's nothing. But that kind of leads to the final part of this and how we've really seen stealth design become more of a facet of a game rather than the game itself. The Metal Gear Solid series being a very famous example of this. Stealth is a big part of it, but there's still action. There's still boss fights. The same goes for Deus Ex, where stealth is just one tool in your utility belt. It's not 100% a stealth game. It's not 100% an action game. It combines these parts to make something unique. And as I asked on the post, for longtime stealth fans, what do you think about those kinds of games, where you can beat up people, but the option to be stealthy is there? And we're about 18 minutes in, and this may turn, if violence stops, and we'll be going for another 20, but that also leads into that discussion of, is it alright in games that let you get experience to reward players more or less, depending upon being stealthy or not? This goes back to when I talked about like good and evil choices and how developers had a really tough time balancing being good or bad. Sometimes they gave you more experience for being good, but they gave you like better powers for being evil. And it kind of led to that very weird moral quandary there. Now, one other example of a game that I didn't mention in the post I want to bring up here is the idea of games that let you hide in plain sight. Assassin's Creed and Hitman being two of the big ones. I really like this kind of system. I think it's a very interesting take on visual detection, but for some reason I just have never gotten into the Hitman series. As you know, I tried playing the latest Hitman for a Let's Play, and my interest just tends to peter out with those games, and I'm not quite sure why. And I've played previous Hitman games before. But Hitman is a really good example of a more unique form of a visual system, by the fact that you can wear these disguises and you can get around guards that way, but you still have to make sure you're in the right place. If you're walking around as a guard in a place where there aren't supposed to be one, people aren't going to get alerted to you. But for those of you watching, are there any other examples of games that have unique stealth elements to it? Stuff that just goes beyond simple visual and sound. And can you think of games that really did elevate the stealth genre? Even in today's market, I know Dishonor is one that's been brought up a lot lately, and one of these days I need to sift through and play that game. But we're going to wrap things up here. Thank you so much for watching today's Critical Thought. We are running a little bit longer, but if you enjoy things, be sure to like and subscribe if you're brand new. If you have a suggestion for a future one, be sure to let me know in the comments below. But otherwise, that's going to do it. So be sure to check back daily for more great content here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoy it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and of course share with your friends. It always helps out. For daily posts on all manner of game design and industry topics, check out game-wisdom.com. To support the site and everything that I do, be sure to check out the Patreon campaign. If we can hit goals, it will mean more content for everyone to enjoy, and I'll be able to support myself and my household. If you want to follow me, you can find me on Twitter at GWBycer for updates throughout the day and random thoughts from me. And lastly, you can find me on Twitch right over there at GWBycer for daily streams most nights around 10 Eastern. Thanks again for watching the video, and be sure to check out more great content coming to the Game Wisdom channel real soon.